comment we get quite a lot is that Star Trek died in 2005 when Enterprise ended, and that we need a total reset of Star Trek if it's going to survive. Do we? Welcome to the Tachyon Pulse podcast, part of the scitrek family.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
It's not just do we need a reset, do we think we're going to get a reset? But I'll talk about that more in a minute. I grew up with the Star Trek, The Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise. Those were Star Trek for me. Those were my formative years when I was, 15, 16, when I first discovered Star Trek, The Next Generation. I knew about Star Trek. I knew about the movies. But TNG is what made me fall in love with Star Trek and why I became a Trekkie. And I still am today. New Trek, I'm not as in love with. So first of all, obviously we've got the J.J. Abrams Trek. I had a problem with the J.J. Abrams Trek immediately. And if you're a regular sci-trekker and Tachyon Pulser, you will know that I've voiced those disappointments quite a lot. I like them as movies. I think they're entertaining. I think they're fun. But I don't think they're Star Trek. I think they step on canon far too much. I think technologically they step on canon far too much. The Enterprise in all three of the J.J. Abrams movies was different. Why? For one of the examples, what they did was in the third movie, they elongated the neck to make it look weirder and thinner, because there's that scene when the ships go through it and cut the head off, basically. So they changed the design of the Enterprise to basically allow that scene to happen. That sort of thinking annoys me when we're talking about Star Trek. I just did a video on Walter Matt Jeffries, and when he designed the Enterprise, he really thought through the design process. It's not the sort of thing I can imagine him doing, but that is the sort of thing J.J. Abrams does. He made the Enterprise massive just because it would look better on an IMAX screen. That sort of thinking annoys me as a Trekkie, because it's sci-fi, science fiction. The science is supposed to be in there. I found the J.J. Abrams movies more science fiction. Little science, big fiction. But we then got the TV series. And I will continue to say that the influence of the J.J. Abrams, remembering that Alex Kurtzman, who owns Secret Hideout and is the executive producer and the main showrunner for most of the Star Trek we now have, knew J.J. Abrams worked on the J.J. Abrams movies. So those movies heavily influenced the new series of Star Trek. We actually saw that with the Klingons. We saw that with things like in Picard, where we have the Romulan disaster, where a supernova goes off and for some reason destroys a planet light years away. But we saw those influences in Discovery and Picard, etc., etc. We have a small problem with Strange New Worlds in that it is changing canon. It is really getting close to the original series now, where it's changing canon even more and really putting at risk of actually rewriting the original series. We have had some arguments to say, actually, that everything within New Trek, Kurtzman Trek, is a different universe anyway. And that actually, other than maybe Lower Decks, it all exists within a different universe, basically caused by Discovery. And that we've sort of had a bit of confirmation of that in Lower Decks when we saw a Klingon change from the Klingon we know from the Prime universe into a Discovery Klingon and back again, during a sequence that was allowing lots of different universes to merge together. Basically saying, yeah, everything happened in Discovery, different universe. It would explain why Spock's got a sister we've never heard of. So it does seem to be actually that New Trek is already sort of setting up the argument that everything that's happened in New Trek under Kurtzman didn't happen in the Prime universe. And therefore, we could actually have a complete reset back to that Prime universe, the Brannon Braga Star Trek. And that would actually allow us to pretty much ignore everything that's happened in the new Trek universe, like the burn, for example, which we can now just ignore because it was a stupid idea and boring. So, should they do that though? For me, Skydance is coming in to buy Paramount. That sale should go through in the coming months. When they do, they've got a massive, massive decision to make because, as you will know, the contract that they have with Paramount to produce Star Trek, Secret Hideout has, comes to an end next summer in about 14 months. So Secret Hideout have a decision to make. Do we continue with Star Trek under Secret Hideout, or do we do something else? Now, you will know from previous videos, if you've caught them, that I'm being told that actually they are looking at doing something else, and that at most Secret Hideout might get an extension of a couple of years to give the new owners of Paramount time to focus on other things. You say, you get on with Star Trek for a couple of years, we'll get the business actually sort of running properly, because it's not at the moment, it's not a well-run business. And then we'll revisit Star Trek in a couple of years. So you crack on, but we're watching, sort of thing. That seems to be at most what they're going to get, even though I had heard after Section 31 came out, that became less likely. They were not happy. So that would be the perfect opportunity for Secret Hideout to go in a different direction and maybe take a big step back with Star Trek and return to the Prime universe. What sort of shows would we get? I'd be looking at Legacy. I would basically say, oh, by the way, everything happened in Discovery, everything happened in Strange New Worlds, different universe. The first 2 seasons of Picard, we'll pretend that didn't happen, but the 3rd season, that's canon. And then jump off into Legacy. Lower Decks is canon. You could even say Prodigy is canon. And then that would allow us to basically move forward with Star Trek and just forget the worst of Star Trek that's happened with Discovery. Some bits of Discovery liked, but generally not so much. There is that opportunity there. And to be honest, a lot of people will argue that each individual series of Star Trek is an individual series, so really shouldn't sort of be considered in this wider universe thing. Anyway, when you come up with a new series, it's a new project, so don't worry too much about the constraints that other series have put on it. I disagree. I think we're living in a universe, and I like the history of it and stuff, and I'm a Trekkie. The history of these things matter. So I want to see a Star Trek that does make sense and that makes as few canon errors as possible. Should they do that? Yeah, because that is the Federation that we all fell in love with, that Trekkies of a certain age fell in love with. We desperately want to see where the Federation is now. That's why we wanted Picard so much, because we're going to get to see where our beloved Federation is 20 years on. We never really got that with Picard. Only very limited little snapshots. We saw the Stargaze, we saw a couple of starships in season 2 and a couple more in Picard season 3, but not enough. And what we did see didn't make sense in places, but not enough. So I really want us to explore that continuation. I don't want any more attempts at prequels. They don't work. I don't necessarily need to see a new show aboard the Enterprise, even though I do want to see Legacy because of Captain Seven in charge. But I don't have to. The Federation is vast. Let's get back with a contemporary timeline, and let's do something that makes a little bit more sense and doesn't confuse itself. Because Trek does that a lot. Confuse itself, I mean. And with somebody like Alex Kurtzman in charge, that just happens even more. So, can they do a reset? Yes. Should they? Probably. And from a story point of view, they do actually seem to have already put the mechanisms for doing it in place. So, great. But guys, what do you think? Should we go back to a prime contemporary Star Trek, following on from Voyager, that explores that time in space and the Federation more? Get back to the Star Trek we know. Is that a Star Trek you'd want to watch? Or should we continue with new Trek, Starfleet Academy, maybe even Legacy under Alex Kurtzman? There's a plan already there. Should they be allowed to continue? Should new Trek be allowed to continue? Or should it go the way of the burn and just be burned away? Get into the comments and tell me exactly what you think. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out and you'll never miss any of our new videos. Also, you can go to patreon.com/scitrek, where most of our new videos do premiere first and you get to see them without the adverts. Go check it out. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.